Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2020 Public Observing event. My name is Nathan Walheis. I am one of the heads of the Haverford Public Observing, along with Kate Gold. Tonight, we're going to be working on constellations of various cultures, especially those that are not our own in the sort of western part of the world. We're going to open up tonight with a brief demonstration of Stellarium, a astronomy observation program that is very useful for figuring out what sort of stars and constellations and other astronomical objects will be visible on, like, depending on the conditions you put in. So to start that off, we're going to go to Kate Gold.
Everyone. Tonight I'm at the 16-inch telescope. I'm in the warm room, which is up near the telescopes. And unfortunately, we're not able to be using our telescopes. We have both a 16-inch and a 12-inch telescope at our observatory at Haverford College. But the weather today is kind of dismal. It is cloudy and rainy. And so today instead, we're going to be using Stellarium. And Professor Karen Masters has pulled Stellarium up. It's a program that you can access both either a program on your computer, or there's also a web version. And so Karen's able to set it to where our location. So I believe right now it's set up to be in Haverford College or the Ardmore area.
Yes, that's right. I've started this off near enough at Haverford. It says Philadelphia there, but close enough. And at the current date and time. So this is the view that we would see outside right now if we could be at the telescope, and also if it were a clear night. So we have some really beautiful constellations in the wintertime sky. And so particularly this one here, Orion, is one of my favorites. Here's the line art for Orion. This is a particular favorite. And I think Kate maybe was going to tell us about the Orion Nebula.
Hi, everyone. So we can, let's see. Karen, are you able to navigate to the Orion Nebula? Oh, it's at your cursor, I believe.
Yes. I think so. If we use the search function here, we can get it centered, and then we'll be able to zoom right in. Oops.
Perfect. So I believe that the Orion Nebula is, well, a nebula by name, what we're looking at. I believe that this is where stars have formed. And so we see it looks a little dusty. We see that gas and dust. And that has since formed quite a long time ago into stars, but we're able to look back because of how far away it is. That light has traveled a very long distance. And so we're seeing it as it was roughly 1,300 years ago, if I remember correctly. And there are many objects there. And with the resolution, you might be able to pick out a few of them.
Yeah, it's a beautiful target for telescopic observing. We've had some really nice student images taken of this with our telescopes. And what's fun is you can actually make it out just with the naked eye. If we zoom back to what the sky looks like with the naked eye, without any aids, you can see it as this faint fuzzy patch on the sword of Orion, which is nice. One other fun thing about the Stellarium program is that we can use it we can fast forward time on it. So I'm actually going to go over to where Jupiter is. Jupiter and Saturn have not risen yet, so that's a thing. We can also turn off the ground. So we can look through the ground, and we can see that Jupiter and Saturn are not quite risen right now, but will be rising later this evening. And if we fast forward time a lot, we should be able to see that they're going to be getting closer together over the next few days, and things are going to kind of rotate around. Oh, and there's the sun. I turned off the atmosphere, so that won't be bothering us again. So now it's almost like we're kind of floating in space, and we can watch Saturn and Jupiter moving, from our perspective, are moving closer and closer together. And I'm going to speed up time even more. Oh, that's a bit dizzying. If we get to around about the 21st of December, I believe, they're going to be incredibly close together. And actually so close together that we should be able to take an image of both of them in the same field of view with our camera. So the students won't be here then, but I might have a go at doing that. Well, some of you might be here, right? But anyway. If we keep zooming in even further, we can see some of the moons of Jupiter, which again are a really nice telescopic object. So this is the kind of view we might get of Jupiter and Saturn together in the same field of view towards the end of December. Even without a telescope, this is going to look like a very impressive sight. So I'm going to put time back to the normal rate and zoom out a bit. I wonder if they're below the ground. Oh, it's daytime though, so we need to speed up a little bit so that we go to the night of the 19th of December. Oh, sorry, that was turning off the atmosphere. So the sky only looks blue because of the reflecting of light in the atmosphere. Oh, we're not good. I'm out of practice getting the speed right. Let's go back a bit. There'll be a really nice evening sight. Here we go. Early in the evening on the 19th, 20th, 21st of December, they're going to be super close together in the sky and a really nice evening sight. Was there anything else you wanted to show, Kate, James?
List. Sorry, 1 second. We have a handy list to consult. Yes, the anything else on the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction? That is, or the only other thing I don't know if I missed you saying it. I believe it's the closest they have been in about 400 years, and it'll be I think a similar amount of time until it happens again.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And of course, they're not actually close together, right? It's just from our perspective that they appear to be almost in the same direction. So. Very cool. We're being reminded that we can also see an eclipse coming up in December. I believe that's the 14th of December. I think there's a way to just jump in time. So if we jump to the 14th of December, and I think we need it to be sometime in the morning on the 14th. Oops, look, we're looking at the ground. And let us look at the moon. Here we have, you can see the moon is very, very close to the sun at this time. And if we get time to move forwards, what's going to happen is the moon is actually going to go, from our perspective, won't precisely go in front of the sun. But if we were to move the location further south down into Argentina, we'd actually see the moon going directly in front of the sun, and that's what we call a solar eclipse. You won't be able to see that from here, but I'm sure you'll be able to find a live stream and watch. It's going over a number of big observatories actually in South America. So I imagine there's going to be some really good live streams of this. So that's in the morning of the 14th of December that's happening.
Okay, cool. Well, if there's nothing else, let's give a virtual round of applause to Karen, Kate, and James. Next up, I believe Kate and James are going to give some brief tours of the 12-inch and 16-inch domes.
Sure. So yeah, I think we actually can start kind of right where we are, if that's all right. We are currently in the control room for the 16-inch telescope here at Strawbridge Observatory. So we don't quite have this amenity over on the smaller telescope, but because we have a CCD, which is like a scientific imaging camera on the 16-inch here, we get to have this great computer set up to run it kind of virtually. And also you get to be in the light, which is really nice. So let's get into the dome.
So out here, our telescope is actually on a platform. We're going to go up the stairs, and I apologize. It is a very shaky footage, but we're going up to the telescope itself. And this one is the 16-inch telescope. And one of the first things that we do whenever we come into this space, we can open up the door onto the telescope, which is here, or to open up the dome. And we do that manually with a rope and pulley. And so that's always a fun experience. And we're going to pull a cover off the telescope, and so that we will be able to look at it a little bit better. So this telescope has, I believe we call it an equatorial mount, and that just means, and one of the other panelists can correct me if that's not correct, but it just means that right now this is pointing, let's see, well, it's mounted in one specific way, and there's a different way which it could be alternatively mounted.
Yeah, so it just means that one of the axes points towards the North Pole, right? So that when you rotate it, it's rotating just like in the same plane as the Earth's rotation.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, so that has some really nice advantages and disadvantages depending on how you look at it. The other type of ways that telescopes are commonly set up is called an altitude azimuth mount. So what you'll notice a little bit of difference is that it'll shift kind of just like if you were on, if you were just looking yourself. So you can look around in this direction or up and down. The nice thing about having it move kind of with the motion of the Earth is that whenever we're looking at something, it always stays oriented the same way. Yeah, anything you want to note about the 16-inch?
Currently, we have a CCD software set up with it, and that allows us to do a little bit more scientific computing. It produces a bunch of like bits files, they're called, and those contain lots of data. But we don't always see an image, or like right now, whenever we don't have an IP set up, we actually couldn't see through the telescope. We just get the data that we're able to connect to a computer. So that's different from our 12-inch telescope, which we're going to next. And that one has an eyepiece in it. So we'll be there in one moment.
Oh. Sorry. What kind of telescope is it? Oh, here we go. Is it a refraction or reflection-based telescope? That's a great question. So we, historically, there are two different ways of constructing a telescope. So if you think about the old style telescope like we have here in the classroom in the observatory, or conveniently on our shirts, you'll see that it is a series of lenses all in a line that kind of keeps stepping down the light until they hit the eyepiece just at the very end, which is refraction. However, that has some problems with the way that light behaves, and so you get really weird distortion, kind of almost like if you know the Pink Floyd album cover, the light starts to diverge and the different colors get all messed up. So it's not great for kind of scientific pictures. But modern telescopes now, we use a series of mirrors to redirect the light, and that creates a much more accurate result when we want to get kind of information on the color of different astronomical objects.
I believe there's another question. about how do you see the object if you are inside a dome? Okay.
While they're walking, maybe we could answer that. So Kate did demonstrate the door that we open in the dome so that we can look through a hole, and the dome will rotate, so we can move that to point at any place on the sky. Yeah.
We would love to demonstrate that, but because of the weather, we don't want to get our equipment wet or perhaps damaged.
It also makes a very loud and scary sound when you rotate it occasionally.
So right now, Kate and James are just walking across the roof. It's a safe roof area. We enjoy doing some constellation shows from here on clear nights in public observing. The 12-inch telescope dome that they're just entering there is just across the roof. And like the 16-inch, the telescope in this dome is up on a platform. That's because the domes were designed for the much longer, older style telescopes. And so for the more modern reflecting telescope, excuse me, we needed a platform to reach the eyepiece.
Yeah, we are here at the second telescope here at Strawbridge Observatory. It's a little bit smaller. It's 12 inches in diameter. And we're in an appropriately kind of sized down dome. So as I said before, we don't get all the amenities that we have over in the bigger dome. There's no separate room or anything like that. But because there's no camera set up here right now, we can use this telescope as you kind of traditionally imagine it, having an eyepiece on the end and being able to look right into it. Other similarities though, we get to move the dome around all mechanically. We still get to do the fun pulley system. One thing I forgot to note last time that is in both of our domes is that whenever you look in a dome, you'll tend to see both red lights and white lights. So the white lights are really nice to have up like they are right now. They're good for Zoom calls and things like that. However, when you're actually observing, you want to make sure that your eyes are accustomed to the darkness and the telescope isn't getting flooded with unnecessary light. The nice thing though is about, at least for our eyes, red light doesn't disturb how well we have acclimated to the dark skies as other areas of light do. So usually when we're full in observing mode, we can have all the white lights off and just the red lights. Gives it a nice spooky, that was the last public observing one. Anything else you'd like to note about 16-inch?
One other thing that we can note is that while the 16-inch, well, the fact that the 16-inch is larger than the 12-inch, it is more magnified, and so it would have a smaller field of view. And the other panelists can correct me if that's incorrect. However, this one would have a larger field of view because it would be less magnified.
That's absolutely correct. We have a question from the audience. Is there light pollution to worry about on the campus?
Absolutely, yes. We are very close to we're very close to the center of Philadelphia, or at least comparatively to some of the darker sky areas. So though we got a handful of stars out here in Haverford, compared to what we see if you go into some like designated dark sky areas, other places of the US, national parks and things like that, where you can see the Milky Way with your naked eye. Here in Haverford, typically you can kind of count how many stars there are in the sky pretty easily without losing too much track. So light pollution is definitely a bit of a concern. Thankfully, it doesn't influence our telescopes too terribly. I believe this might be wrong, tends to be more of an effect for kind of naked eye observing because of the very high power, you're looking at a very concentrated part of the sky. So if your image is washed out, it's kind of a more minor effect than losing the entire half of the sky. Do you have another question? Or?
There's a question about why red light messes with night vision less than white light.
Right.
It's kind of a biology question, do you know?
I believe in some ways that it refers to the electromagnetic spectrum and the way that our eyes are built. We have both rods and cones. And so the cones are, you can think cones for color. The cones are really good at seeing color. And those are towards the center of your eye. And our eyes are built for 3 colors or a 3-color system. So we can see red, green, blue, whereas other animals or other mammals or other species might be able to see more or less. But we have 3 cones and we also have rods, and the rods are mostly for black and white, and they're useful at nighttime and for seeing the discrepancies of seeing contrast, I believe. So you see black and white, but with more contrast at nighttime using the rods, and the red light helps with that because it's a little bit dimmer and it appears, it caters more to those rods.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Kate and James. Next up, well, first a virtual round of applause.
We do have one other thing before our round of applause, if we can interject. We would like to demonstrate the dome moving because that is something that we're able to do, and it is quite the experience, even with the dome shut. So we're going to be leaving everything nice and dry, but we can show you the mechanics of it a little bit and how things move out. So here we have the rope and pulley, and we're going to be able to see that move. And you might be able to hear what that sounds like as well.
We're good?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Are you talking, James? Because you're muted in a very 2020 Zoom tradition.
Okay. I guess we are going to be transferring over to Miranda for her brief little presentation on the events of Arecibo and other telescopes.
I believe there is a question on the forum right now, so if you want to take a minute and answer about that.
So yeah, it's a question about whether we can share any images taken with our telescope. Actually, many of the people who are panelists here have been taking images this semester, and I've been sharing them on the Haverford Astronomy blog, and I'll put the link up. So.
Okay, I'll start sharing a screen for my presentation. So I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but I believe it should be working. So I'll be talking about the telescopes on native sites and also mentioning about the recent event that happened about Arecibo, which is the picture I currently have on background right now. It's one of the biggest telescopes to exist, and we'll talk about that toward the end of this presentation. Okay. Ignore that. Let me talk more about the telescopes. So generally, there are 2 kinds of telescopes that people normally use, the optical and the radio telescopes. So the optical telescopes are just, they take data based on colors, like the normal spectrum that we see, infrared, stuff like that. And then there's radio telescopes that take images or data based on the radio waves that they're receiving with these big dishes and receivers. So first, we're going to mention, I think, 2 optical telescopes that are big and well-known in America. So the first one is the Large Binocular Telescope. It's located on Mount Graham, Arizona. It's very big. You see that in the back of on the background, there are two telescopes. This is optical, and both of the dishes are 8.4 meters wide, and the centers are 14.4 meters apart. The purpose of having two telescopes side by side is that I believe it will be easier to move them around and building them. And the combination of this will be able to achieve a higher light gathering ability and resolution than a regular 8.4 meter wide telescope. I believe the data is that they can have the light gathering ability as 11.8 meter and the resolution of a 22.8 meter wide one. These two join the second largest optical telescope in North America, with, I think, the first located in Texas. And another example of optical telescopes is the CAC-1 and CAC-2 telescopes. In the CAC Observatory located in Hawaii is the picture that I'm having on the background here. Both of them have a 10-meter aperture, and they were the largest astronomical telescopes in the world when they were built. So that's on a very big level. It's not limited to optical or radio. They were the biggest telescopes whatsoever. Right now, they're the third and the fourth, because as years go by, new telescopes get built. And also, this I have here is a plan on building an extremely large telescope in Hawaii in the same location as well. It's a proposed plan. I think it is approved, but the building has not started yet. I think it's a particularly controversial plan because this area, forgive me if I can't pronounce it right, I think it's Manu, Hawaii. It's one of the most sacred mountain in native Hawaiian culture, and this plan of building the telescope might be damaging or disrespectful to the culture without consent and stuff like that. So it has been very controversial, but the plan, I think it's approved and it will go under construction in sometime soon. And now we have go into the radio telescope. These sets of telescopes are called the Very Large Array Telescopes. They're located in San Augustine, New Mexico. So for radio telescopes, it's not limited to one or two telescopes that are working. They can have a very large array, as it's stated. It has 28 25-meter dishes in a Y-shaped array in order to illustrate or to mimic a very, very big telescope that we're not able to build. But then in an array of multiple telescopes is able to collect data as if it's a very big telescope as one thing. You can also have single dish telescopes, radio telescopes. Those tend to be very large, but having an array is also a side option if that's not buildable or you don't have as much money. And for example, and also there's this such thing as a global array. So for example, if you have a very big radio telescope here in America and you have one out in Asia, one out in Africa, those telescopes, as they are individual ones, can act as a global array and act as a very, very big radio telescope. So in order to have like an Earth-sized radio telescope. This particular one has done a lot of things, observations on black holes, protoplanetary disks, Milky Way galactic center observations, stuff like that. And we also have the Greenbank telescope, which is much closer to where we are right now. It's in Greenbank, West Virginia. I think most of the observations that Karen and a lot of students that are studying astrophysics at Harvard is using for their radio projects and stuff It is also a very big telescope. It has a 100-meter dish, so that's the diameter. It is right now at the moment world's largest fully steerable radio telescope. So this whole dish will be able to move all the way around towards whatever direction the object that we want to observe is in order to trace them and take data. So back before 1988, there was a 300-foot radio telescope located in the Green Bank Observatory, and it was very big, but it collapsed. And this 100-meter dish was built after the collapse, and that will be leading to a very sad talk at the moment. So I guess you guys would have known by the time, if you're interested in astrophysics or just have been reading the news. I think world's second largest radio telescope and was collapsed on December 1st, and I think 6:55 a.m. in the morning. And it is located in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, and the telescope itself is named Arecibo. It's part of the Arecibo Observatory. It has a 305-meter dish. So what you see down here, as I have in the picture, is a very, very big dish. So as we have said before, for the Green Bank telescope, this one is fully steerable. So you can point in whatever direction you want the dish to. So you wouldn't really have to, in this case, it can't really be super big because the structure just cannot hold up. So in order to have a bigger dish, this is also another option of building really big radio telescopes, is to have a very big dish and a receiver up here, which I have stated is 150 meters above the dish. It looks like it's super small, but it's not. This one in size would be a 6th-floor high by its size, and I think it weighs 900 tons. Sorry for the typo here. This whole telescope is completed in 1963 and in use ever since. And on December 1st, this tragedy happened. As we have seen here on the screen, the receiver, as you can see, is not hanging up there anymore. So I think for the past few years, Arecibo, as old as it is, have been slowly wearing down during use, and it wasn't really getting enough funding for repairing and just holding it into place. And earlier this year, I think in early fall, it was decided that the telescope will be decommissioning and not getting used anymore. And December 1st, the telescope itself decided that it will no longer be on duty. And the receiver, as we said, is very big and very heavy, collapsed because the steel cables that were holding it up, as you can see here, in the air collapsed. I think there were quite a few of them collapsed first, I think 2 or 3, and then the whole thing just fall down because the weight cannot be held with the other cables. I have a video I want to show you guys. Just a second, I need to stop sharing and switch to another thing. One moment. I need to quit the presentation. Nope, sorry. Here. It wouldn't let me. Sorry about this. This is not what I attempt to do. Here. So this is a video of the telescope collapsing. And in case you guys haven't seen it, it's very sad, but here it is. So as you can see, the cables are broke and the receiver falls down, just like that. And that's very sad. And in memory of the telescope, I hope I can talk a little bit about what the telescope have done, because it's not super well known if you haven't really looked into it. The telescope was built in 1963, I think. And one of its first accomplishments was to establish the rotation rate of Mercury, which we have been measuring before the telescope was there. But then this particular telescope was able to measure it in greater accuracy, which turns out to be 59 days rather than the previously estimated 88 days. So that's a very big correction happening right there. And in 1974, it discovered the first pulsar, which is a kind of star that rotates very, very quickly and emits these things, as you can see up here, which is some kind of energy that it creates while it's rotating. And people have I think before then, people haven't really been able to see any pulsar that's in a binary system. So this was the first. And in 1974, another big event about the telescope happened, which was this thing. This was called the Arecibo message. So this was an attempt of sending message out into the space in hope of, it was both a test of the telescope and also in hope of communicating with outward culture that might exist somewhere. So I think this message says, the first part up here are the Arabic numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's coded in binary. I'm not particularly sure. Don't quote me on this. And this part is, 1 second. This part is the basic chemical elements. And this part, I believe, represents the things we have in our genes and the double helix, human, and our understanding of the solar system. So that's the sun, those are the planets. And these things down here represents the thing that we send it with, which is the Arecibo telescope. And there were more discoveries that the telescope had done, including the millisecond pulsars. So before this, we only know that there were pulsars that turn pretty quickly, but we have yet to discuss one that turns hundreds of times within a second. So that's extremely fast given the size of them. So from that discovery, we're able to categorize pulsars into the kind of rather slower pulsars and the millisecond pulsars, which turns really quickly, and the slower pulsars on average, I think, turns once or a couple times a day. And in 1992, it also discovered the first ever exoplanet. It's not quite Earth-like or around a sun-like star, but it's the first ever exoplanet that was discovered. This is a link of, as you can see here, the Arecibo Observatory accomplishments. I don't think all of these are done with the Arecibo telescope that collapsed, but I think most of them are. I will send this link in the chat if you guys want to see it, check it out yourselves. Yeah, that's all I really have. I see a couple questions in the webinar, I think.
That was really nice, Miranda.
Thank you.
If people want to ask questions, you can post the Q&A or post in the chat.
Okay. And I think in about a minute, we're going to start a brief break. We will be playing some lovely physics and astronomy music that is holiday themed, and we will resume our little event at around 9:30.
We might want to also mention, if there are no questions now, there's going to be a Q&A panel at the end of the event.
Yeah. Okay. Since there doesn't appear to be any questions, I suppose we will go on break. We will all be here and ready to go in 15 minutes.